Delivery driver sees note fallen on the doormat. Upon reading it, knocks on the mansion's door desperately. Brandon Miller was finishing another exhausting day of deliveries when he saw the crumpled paper on the entryway doormat. His first reaction was to ignore it. After all, it wasn't his problem what happened inside those mansions in the upscale Upper East Side neighborhood. It was when he read the words, written with shaky handwriting, that his heart raced. Please help me. My grandma leaves me alone all day. Without thinking twice, he dropped the package on the ground and started banging on the door desperately. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he shouted, feeling cold sweat dripping down his forehead. The silence was broken only by a muffled cry coming from inside the house. Brandon knocked harder, but no one appeared. He was about to leave when he heard footsteps approaching the gate next door. "Young man, what's all this noise?" asked an elegant lady, appearing to be about 70 years old, who had just arrived with shopping bags. "Do you know who lives here? I found this note and—" "Oh, Victoria Harrison's house," sighed the woman. "Poor thing. Since she became a widow, she hasn't had time for anything else, just works and works. The little grandson stays with the nanny." "What nanny?" "There's no one in there. I only hear a child crying." The neighbor stopped organizing her bags and looked at him carefully. "What do you mean, no one? Margaret is always there taking care of Ethan." "I might be mistaken, but—" Brandon showed her the note. "I found this on the doormat." The woman adjusted her glasses and read. Her expression changed completely. Good heavens, Ethan is only 4 years old. How would he write this? Maybe someone helped him. "Ma'am, please, do you have the homeowner's phone number?" "I do, but she's on a business trip. She came back from a meeting in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and today she took a flight to Chicago. She won't be back until the weekend." Brandon felt his stomach churn. It was only Tuesday, and if the child was really alone— "Listen, I'm leaving now, but can I come back here tomorrow? I have a delivery scheduled for this address anyway." Actually, it was a lie. But Brandon couldn't get the note out of his head. He spent the whole night thinking about that muffled crying and the desperate handwriting asking for help. The next morning he invented a fictitious delivery and returned to the neighborhood. He arrived at the house around 10 o'clock when the car traffic had already died down. He knocked on the door more gently this time. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. To his surprise, he heard little footsteps approaching. The door opened slowly, revealing a small boy with messy dark hair and red eyes from crying so much. He was wearing a dirty Spider-Man t-shirt and little blue shorts. "Hi," said Ethan with a hoarse voice. "Hi, little one, are you okay?" The boy shook his head negatively and started crying again. "Where's your grandma?" "Grandma left. She said she'd be right back, but it's been a long time." Brandon felt a lump in his throat. That child couldn't be more than 4 years old, exactly as the neighbor had said. "And Aunt Margaret, the lady who takes care of you?" Ethan made a confused face. "There's no Aunt Margaret here, just me." "Ethan, did you write a note asking for help?" "The cleaning lady taught me. She said if I got too lonely I could write on a paper and leave it by the door, that a good person would find me." Brandon crouched down to be at the child's eye level. "What cleaning lady, son?" "Aunt Donna. She comes sometimes to clean the house. She's the one who taught me to write my name and some words. Are you hungry?" Ethan nodded vigorously. "A lot. There's only old crackers in the kitchen, and the milk is gone." Without hesitation, Brandon entered the house. What he saw left him shocked. The mansion was luxurious with expensive furniture and impeccable decor, but the kitchen was practically empty. In the huge refrigerator, only a few expired yogurt containers and some dried-up pieces of cheese. "Ethan, how many days has it been since your grandmother left?" The little boy thought for a moment, counting on his fingers. "I slept alone 3 times. 3 days." A 4-year-old child had been alone in that house for 3 days. "All right, champ, let's fix this. Do you like sandwiches?" "I do." Brandon ran to the nearest market and came back with bags full of food. He made a ham and cheese sandwich, warmed up a glass of milk, and sat at the table with Ethan, who devoured everything as if he hadn't eaten in days. "Where do you live, mister?" "Not too far from here. And you, do you live just with your grandma?" "Yeah, Mommy and Daddy went to heaven when I was a baby. Grandma takes care of me, but she works a lot." Brandon felt his heart tighten. That child had lost his parents and was now being neglected by the only family he had left. "Ethan, do you have your grandmother's phone number?" "Yes, she left it written on the fridge." Brandon called several times, but it only went to voicemail. He decided to send a message explaining the situation and asking her to call back urgently. During the afternoon, he played with Ethan, who was beaming to have company. The child showed off his expensive toys, but Brandon noticed he preferred simple games, drawing, telling stories, making paper airplanes. "Mister, are you leaving?" "I have to go to work, but I'll come back tomorrow, okay?" "Promise?" "I promise." Brandon left the house with a heavy heart. How could a woman leave a 4-year-old alone for 3 days? Even if she had a company to run, that didn't justify such neglect. The next day he arrived early and found Ethan sitting on the front steps, still in his pajamas. "Did you sleep well, champ?" "I had a nightmare. I dreamed you didn't come back." "But I did come back, didn't I? Now let's take a bath and brush your teeth." Brandon was bathing the child when he heard the sound of a key in the lock. He quickly dressed Ethan and went down to the living room. The door swung open violently and an elegant woman around 45 entered furiously. She wore an impeccable grey suit and carried a leather briefcase. Her brown hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, but her expression was far from refined. "Who are you and what are you doing in my house?" shouted Victoria Harrison, pulling her phone from her pocket. "I'm calling the police right now." "Calm down, ma'am, I can explain." "Explain what? That you broke into my house? That you're trying to kidnap my grandson?" Ethan ran and hid behind Brandon, clinging to his leg. "Don't hurt the mister, Grandma. He took care of me." "Ethan, come here now. Get away from that man." "No. The mister is nice. He gave me food and played with me." Victoria stopped shouting and looked at her grandson. Only then did she notice that he was clean, with neat clothes, and wasn't crying desperately like he had been for the past few months. "Ma'am, before you call the police, let me show you something," said Brandon, taking the note from his pocket. Victoria read it quickly, and her face twisted in anger. "Are you trying to blackmail me? You forged this to try and extort money from me." "What money, ma'am? I work honestly as a delivery driver. I found this note fallen on your rug and I was worried about the child." "Lies. Ethan doesn't even know how to write." "The cleaning lady taught me, Grandma, Aunt Donna. She said if I was too alone, I could ask for help." Victoria paled. Donna was the housekeeper who came twice a week, but for the last few weeks she had cancelled several times due to the rush at work. "Ethan, how many days was I gone?" "3, Grandma. I counted." "But Margaret was here taking care of you." "There was no Margaret here, Grandma, just me." I was very hungry and scared. Victoria sat down heavily on the sofa. The truth was right in front of her, but it was too hard to accept. "Look, Mom," said Brandon calmly. "I don't want anything from you. I was just worried about Ethan. He's a very special child." "You know nothing about my life," Victoria exploded. "You don't know what it's like to lose your husband and have to take over a giant company overnight. You don't know what it's like to try to keep everything running while—" She stopped, realizing she was revealing too much to a stranger. "While raising a child alone," Brandon completed softly. "You're right, Ma'am. I don't know. But I do know what it's like to love a child and want to protect them." "Do you have children?" Brandon hesitated. "I did. I lost my son 2 years ago." Silence filled the room. Ethan, not fully understanding the conversation, approached Brandon and held his hand. "Uncle, are you going to stay?" Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. Victoria went to answer and found the building's doorman, accompanied by an elegant lady. "Mrs. Harrison, sorry to bother you, but Mrs. Susan wanted to speak with you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Victoria, dear," said Susan, the neighbor Brandon had met the day before, "I need to talk to you about a delicate situation." "What situation?" "Well, I've noticed that Ethan has been spending a lot of time alone in the building's hallways." Just the day before yesterday, I saw him walking barefoot in the lobby, crying. The doorman nodded. It's true, Mrs. Harrison. I often find the boy in the common areas always alone. I thought it was normal, but... And one more thing, Susan continued. Other residents have been complaining about the constant crying coming from your apartment, especially at night. Victoria felt the world spinning around her. Ethan really had been alone, and not just this time. Where is Margaret, the nanny? Asked Susan. She... Victoria couldn't finish the sentence. The truth was that Margaret never existed. It was a lie she had invented to avoid being judged by the people in the building, to not seem like an irresponsible grandmother who left her grandson alone while chasing business. Margaret doesn't exist, said Ethan innocently. There was never any lady taking care of me. The doorman and Susan exchanged worried glances. Victoria, this is very serious, said Susan. Our child cannot be left alone. If someone reports it... No one is going to report anything, Victoria exploded. Ethan is my grandson. I take care of him as best I can. By buying expensive toys and leaving the refrigerator empty? Retorted Brandon, unable to contain himself. How dare you? Folks, please, a firm voice interrupted. Everyone turned and saw a woman around 50 years old, wearing discreet business attire, who had appeared at the door. I'm Barbara Williams, the building's social worker. I was called due to some reports about possible child neglect in this apartment. Victoria felt her legs go weak. Who reported it? I can't reveal that, but I need to assess the conditions in which the child is living. Ethan, frightened by the tension in the air, ran to Brandon and hid behind him again. I don't want them to take the uncle away, he murmured softly. Barbara observed the scene with professional attention. Is this child your son? She asked Brandon. No, I'm just... Brandon hesitated, a friend who was concerned about the situation. And what exactly is the situation? Victoria tried to take the lead. There is no situation. My grandson is well cared for. Ethan, said Barbara, crouching down to the child's level, can you tell me how you've been spending your days? The boy looked at Brandon, who nodded encouragingly. Grandma travels a lot. I'm home alone. Sometimes I get scared and cry. But now Uncle came and gave me yummy food. How long have you been alone? Ethan thought. A long time. I'm always alone when Grandma works. Barbara stood up and looked sternly at Victoria. Ma'am, this is child neglect. A 4-year-old cannot be left home alone regardless of the reason. I do what I can, shouted Victoria, finally losing her composure. Do you think it's easy? I lost my husband 2 years ago and had to take over his company. If I don't work, how will I support Ethan? How will I maintain the standard of living he deserves? Standard of living doesn't include emotional abandonment, said Barbara firmly. I don't abandon him. I buy him everything he wants, pay for private school, give expensive gifts. But you don't give attention, affection, presence, added Brandon. You have no right to judge. I don't even know you. But Ethan knows me, and he cares about me, and I care about him. At that moment, Ethan let go of Brandon's hand and ran to Victoria. Grandma, don't fight with Uncle. He's good. He made food for me and played with me. Victoria hugged her grandson and for the first time noticed how different he looked. He wasn't crying anymore, wasn't as thin and scared as in recent months. Barbara, said Brandon, can I make a proposal? You can't propose anything, retorted Victoria. You have no authority for that. Let him speak, said Barbara. I work as a delivery driver, but I live here in the neighborhood. I can take care of Ethan during the times when Mrs. Victoria is working. I wouldn't charge anything, at least at first, until she finds a permanent solution. That's ridiculous, exploded Victoria. I won't let a stranger take care of my grandson. A stranger who cared more about him in 2 days than... Enough, shouted Victoria. Ethan is my grandson. I decide what's best for him. Then decide, said Barbara. Because if I don't see an improvement in this child's situation, I'll have to place him with a temporary family while you sort out your problems. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan began to cry softly. I don't want to go away. I want to stay with Grandma and Uncle. Victoria looked at her grandson, then at Brandon and finally at Barbara. How much time do I have? 1 week. I'll be back next Tuesday for a new evaluation. And if I accept his proposal temporarily, it would be a start. But you would also need to attend some childcare guidance sessions and reorganize your priorities. Victoria felt her pride being wounded with every word. Her, a successful businesswoman, a woman who commanded hundreds of employees, being treated as irresponsible by a social worker and having to accept help from a delivery driver. I need to think. There isn't much time to think, said Barbara. The child needs immediate care. Brandon approached Victoria. I know it's hard for you to accept help from someone like me, but Ethan needs someone who genuinely cares about him. And I care. Why? Asked Victoria, genuinely confused. Why would you care about a child you don't even know? Brandon took a deep breath. Because I know what it's like to not get a second chance to take good care of a child. The weight of those words echoed in the room. Victoria looked into Brandon's eyes and saw a sincerity that completely disarmed her. 1 week trial, she said finally. But anything suspicious and you're out of our lives forever, Ethan shouted with joy and hugged first Brandon, then Victoria. Thank you, Grandma. Now I'll have someone to play with. Barbara smiled for the first time. Great. I'll be back next Tuesday to see how things are going. Brandon, I need your documents for a background check. Of course. I understand. After everyone left, Victoria and Brandon were alone with Ethan, who had gone to get his toys to show Uncle. I don't trust you, Victoria said directly. I understand. But trust Ethan. He knows who truly cares about him. And why should I trust the judgment of a 4-year-old? Because children are pure. They sense who is good and who isn't. Victoria didn't know how to respond. For years she had based her decisions on data, analyses, financial reports. The idea of trusting a child's intuition seemed absurd. What are your conditions? She asked. None, I just want Ethan to be happy. Everyone wants something. Money, favors, connections. I want the chance to take good care of a child, that's all. Victoria studied Brandon's face. There was a deep sadness in his eyes, but also a genuine determination. You said you lost a son. How? Brandon hesitated. Car accident. I was driving, raining heavily. The car skidded and... He couldn't finish the sentence. How old was he? 5. A year older than Ethan. Now Victoria understood. Brandon saw in Ethan a chance for redemption, a way to deal with his guilt and pain. And you think taking care of my grandson will bring your son back? No, but it might help me live with the pain of having lost him. Brandon's brutal honesty left Victoria momentarily speechless. Ethan, she called, come here. The boy came running with a toy car in his hand. Do you like Uncle Brandon? I like him a lot. He makes yummy food and really plays with me. What do you mean, really? Grandma is always on the phone when she plays with me. Uncle is just with me, no phone. Another stab to Victoria's heart. It was true, even in the few moments she spent with Ethan, she was always divided between him and work. All right, we'll try, but there are rules. What? First, you don't enter the house when I'm not here. Ethan stays with you in the afternoon, but you bring him back by the end of the day. Second, any problem, anything strange, and our agreement ends immediately. Third, you don't tell anyone about our family situation. I agree to everything, and you will accept a salary. I don't want to be in debt to anyone. It's not necessary. Yes, it is. I'll pay a fair wage for the care. That way, I don't owe any favors. Brandon nodded. He knew enough businesswomen to know that Victoria needed to feel she was in control of the situation. In the following days, they established a routine. Brandon arrived at 2 in the afternoon when Victoria left for her meetings. He took care of Ethan until 7 in the evening when she returned. During that time they played, did homework, cooked together. Ethan flourished. He started smiling constantly again, began eating better, and most importantly, he stopped writing notes asking for help. Victoria watched the changes in her grandson with a mix of relief and jealousy. On one hand, she was happy to see him well. On the other, it hurt to know that someone else had achieved what she couldn't, making Ethan truly happy. A week later, Barbara returned as promised. She found Ethan playing happily in the garden with Brandon while Victoria worked on her laptop on the porch, but paying attention to the play. "How are things?" asked Barbara. "Much better," admitted Victoria. "Ethan is different." "Different how?" "Happier. He doesn't cry at night anymore, eats properly. Even his teachers commented that he's more engaged." Barbara nodded, satisfied. "And you? How are you feeling about the situation?" Victoria hesitated. "It's strange, confident and insecure at the same time." "Why?" "Confident because I see that Ethan is well. Insecure because someone else is managing to give him what I couldn't." "And does that bother you?" "Very much. I'm a woman used to handling everything on my own. Accepting help is difficult, but necessary." "Yes, necessary." Barbara smiled. "I'll be closing the case, but I want you to keep this arrangement for at least the next 3 months. Ethan needs stability." "And after that?" "We'll see then. Maybe you've found a permanent solution." After Barbara left, Victoria called Brandon for a private conversation. "I want to increase your salary," she said directly. "Why?" "Because you're doing exceptional work. Ethan has never been better. The salary you pay is already good. It's not about what I pay. It's about what you're worth." Brandon looked at her surprised. "What changed?" "Nothing. And everything." Victoria sighed. "I spent the last 2 years thinking being a good grandmother meant giving Ethan expensive things. Toys, clothes, private school. Now I realize he needed something much simpler." "What was it?" "Attention, presence, someone who truly cared about him." "And you do care. You were just confused about how to show it." Victoria sat down heavily. "Brandon, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Have you ever been married?" "I was. My wife couldn't bear the pain of losing our son. We separated 6 months after the accident." "And you've been alone since then?" "I have. I focus all my energy on work. It's the only way I've found to not think." "I understand. I do the same thing." They stayed silent for a few minutes, watching Ethan play in the garden. "Brandon, I need to tell you something." "What?" "When Ethan was born, I promised my daughter I would take care of him as if he were my own son. She and my son-in-law died in an accident when he was 2 years old. Since then, I've tried to be both mother and father at the same time. And when your husband died, then the situation became impossible. I knew nothing about his business. I had to learn everything from scratch, work twice as hard not to lose the company. Ethan ended up being neglected. But it wasn't with bad intentions. No. But that doesn't change the fact that I failed him." "You didn't fail. You just got lost. It happens to everyone who goes through great losses." Victoria looked at Brandon with new eyes. There was a wisdom in him that came from pain, an understanding that only those who have suffered greatly could have. "What's your educational background?" The question took Brandon by surprise. "Education. I worked as a teacher for a few years before the accident." "Yes." "After that, I couldn't be around children anymore, until I met Ethan." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I didn't want you to think I had ulterior motives, that I was trying to take advantage of the situation." Victoria nodded understandingly. "Brandon, I want to make a more formal proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "I want to officially hire you as Ethan's educator, not just to take care of him in the afternoon, but to develop a complete educational program, monitor his homework, stimulate his development, be a positive male role model in his life." Brandon was speechless. "I don't know what to say." Say yes." "Ethan needs you, and I do too." "What do you mean, you too?" "I need to learn to be a better grandmother, and I think you can teach me that." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. 2 weeks later, the routine had been completely established. Brandon arrived at 2 in the afternoon and stayed with Ethan until 7. But now when Victoria arrived, she didn't go straight to her office. She sat with them, listened to the day's stories, joined in the games. It was during one of these afternoons that they received an unexpected visit. The doorbell rang, and Victoria went to answer. At the door stood an elegant man, about 50 years old, wearing an impeccable suit. "Richard, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my sister-in-law and my grandnephew. May I come in?" Richard was the brother of Victoria's late husband. They hadn't spoken in months due to disagreements about the company's direction. "Ethan is busy right now." "With whom?" Richard pushed the door open and entered, stopping abruptly when he saw Brandon playing with Ethan on the living room floor. "Who is this man?" "It's Uncle Brandon," shouted Ethan happily. "He takes care of me." Richard looked from Victoria to Brandon with a look of contempt. "Victoria, may I speak with you in private? Anything you have to say can be said in front of Brandon." "Fine." Richard straightened up. "I've received some concerning information about Ethan's situation." "What kind of information?" "That you hired a delivery driver to take care of him." "And what's the problem?" "What's the problem?" Richard laughed bitterly. "Victoria, we are a traditional family. We can't have just anyone taking care of Ethan." "Just anyone?" Brandon rose slowly. "No offense, son, but you understand the situation. Ethan is the heir to a considerable fortune. He can't be cared for by—" "By what?" interrupted Victoria. "Finish the sentence, Richard." "By someone who doesn't have the proper qualifications, the proper status." "Status?" Victoria felt her anger rising. "And what status do you have besides being born into a wealthy family?" "This isn't about me, Victoria. It's about what's best for Ethan. And what's best for Ethan is to be loved, cared for, and given attention, things that Brandon provides, and that our traditional family wasn't giving." Richard turned to Brandon. "How much do you want?" "What do you mean?" "To get out of Ethan's life. Everyone has a price." "Richard!" shouted Victoria. "I don't have a price," said Brandon calmly. "At least not for this." "Of course you do. 50,000, 100,000? Richard, that's enough. Get out of my house right now." "I'm not leaving until this situation is resolved. Ethan is part of our family, and I won't allow him to be influenced by a—" "By a what?" Brandon's voice was dangerously low. "By someone like you." The silence that followed was tense. Ethan, frightened by the argument, ran to Brandon and hid behind him. "Don't yell at Uncle Brandon," said Ethan with a trembling voice. "Ethan, come here," ordered Richard. "This man is not your uncle." "Yes, he is. He's good to me." "Ethan," Richard crouched down, "this man is here for your grandmother's money. He doesn't really care about you." "That's a lie," shouted Ethan, starting to cry. "He does care." Brandon crouched down and hugged Ethan. "It's okay, champ. Don't be sad." "See?" Richard said to Victoria. "He's already manipulating the child." "Manipulating?" Victoria was beside herself. "Brandon saved Ethan from a situation of neglect. He saved him from me." "Because you were confused, grieving. But now you can hire a professional nanny, someone with proper references." "Like the Margaret I made up," Victoria retorted sarcastically. Richard stopped. "What do you mean, made up?" "That's right. The famous Margaret never existed. It was a lie I told so I wouldn't have to admit I was leaving Ethan alone." "Alone? A 4-year-old child?" "Exactly. And when Brandon found Ethan, he hadn't eaten properly for 3 days. He was scared and abandoned." Richard paled. You left Ethan alone for 3 days." "I did, and if it weren't for Brandon, God only knows what could have happened. But that's child neglect." "It is. And now that I've admitted it in front of the whole family, what are you going to do? Report me? Try to take Ethan away from me?" Richard didn't know what to say. The situation was much more serious than he had imagined. "Victoria, why didn't you come to me? I could have helped." "Because you were busy trying to get me out of the company presidency." "That's different." "No, it's not. You wanted Ethan away from me to get access to his inheritance." The accusation landed like a bomb in the room. "How dare you say that?" "Because it's true. Ever since your brother died, you've been trying to push me out of the business. And now you show up here pretending to care about Ethan." "I genuinely care about him. If you cared, you would have noticed he was suffering. Brandon noticed in one day what you didn't see in 2 years. Brandon, who had remained quiet during the argument, finally spoke. Mr. Richard, I understand your concern. If he were my great-nephew, I would also question a stranger taking care of him. So you understand the situation. I do. But I also understand that Ethan is a child who needs love and attention, not social status. And you think you can provide that? I know I can, because I already am. Richard looked at Ethan, who remained glued to Brandon. Ethan, come here to Uncle Richard. I don't want to. I want to stay with Uncle Brandon. Why? Because he really plays with me, and he makes good food, and he doesn't yell. The child's innocent words were like a slap to Richard. I don't yell. Yes, you do. And Grandma used to yell too before Uncle Brandon came. Richard looked at Victoria, who averted her gaze, ashamed. Ethan, Richard tried again, Uncle can buy you new toys. How about a video game? I already have lots of toys. I want someone to play with me. The simplicity of the answer left Richard speechless. Brandon, Richard finally said, I'll be direct. You seem like a good person, but I don't have the right last name or the right bank account or the right social circle. Exactly. And that bothers you more than Ethan's well-being. Richard hesitated. That's not it. Yes, it is. You're more worried about what others will think than about the child's happiness. Ethan is the heir to a business empire. He needs to be prepared to take on responsibilities. He's 4 years old. The foundations are built early. Foundations of what? Of being a cold and compassionless person? Of being a responsible person aware of his social position? Brandon shook his head. Mr. Richard, with all due respect, Ethan doesn't need to learn about social position at 4 years old. He needs to learn about love, affection, emotional security. And you think you can teach that? I know I can, because I'm a certified teacher, and because I genuinely care about him. A teacher? Richard turned to Victoria. You didn't tell me he was a teacher, because you didn't ask. You assumed he was just an unqualified delivery man. Richard felt cornered. Even so, there are matters of social suitability. Social suitability? Victoria laughed bitterly. Richard, do you want to know what's socially unsuitable? It's leaving a 4-year-old child alone at home because you're too busy chasing money. Victoria. No, let me finish. Brandon may not have been born rich, but he has something our family has lost, humanity. That's ridiculous. Is it? When was the last time you hugged Ethan? When was the last time you played with him without thinking about something else? Richard didn't know how to answer. And you, Victoria? He retorted. When was the last time you did that before he showed up? The blow hit home. Victoria lowered her head. You're right, I failed too, but at least I recognize it, and I'm trying to change. Changing how? By delegating the responsibility to a stranger. By learning from someone who knows how to take care of children better than I do. Brandon approached Richard. Mr. Richard, I understand it's hard to accept that a stranger is part of Ethan's life. But think about what's best for him. Look at Ethan now and tell me, does he seem happy or unhappy? Richard looked at the boy, who was playing quietly in Brandon's lap. He seems calm. More than that, he seems secure, confident. How long has it been since you last saw Ethan like this? Richard had to admit he couldn't remember. But that doesn't solve the question of suitability. Suitability for what? For living in a social bubble? For growing up thinking he's better than other people? To maintain the family's position in society? And what if Ethan doesn't want to maintain that position? What if he wants to be happy instead of rich? He can be both. He can, but he first needs to learn how to be human. Brandon's argument was simple but powerful. Richard sat down heavily. I worry about his future. So do I, said Brandon. But I believe a happy future is more important than a rich one. What if he can have both? Then great. But first he needs to have a solid emotional foundation. He needs to know he's loved regardless of what he has. Richard remained silent for long minutes, watching the interaction between Brandon and Ethan. All right, he said finally. I'll give it a chance, but with conditions. What are they? Asked Victoria. I want to get to know Brandon better. I want to know his story, his background, his references. That's fine, agreed Brandon. I have nothing to hide, and I want to monitor Ethan's development, regular visits, reports on his progress. No problem. And if at any point I see this isn't working, I'll step aside myself, completed Brandon. Richard nodded slowly. Very well, we'll try. In the following months, the family dynamic changed drastically. Richard began visiting regularly, and, initially reluctant, soon realized the benefits of Brandon's presence in Ethan's life. The child was visibly happier, more communicative, more confident. His grades at school improved, and he began showing interest in activities that used to scare him. Victoria changed too. She started setting aside more time for Ethan, actively participating in his routine. Brandon taught her simple techniques for interacting with children, and she discovered that being a grandmother could be much more rewarding than she had imagined. But not everything was a bed of roses. Victoria's extended family didn't view the situation favorably. During a family lunch, the tension came to a head. Victoria, dear, said her sister-in-law Helen, her late husband's sister, we're all worried about this situation. What situation? You know very well. That man practically living in your home. Brandon doesn't live in my home, he works there. Even so, don't you think people are talking? What people? Our friends, the people at the club, the other business people. And what exactly are they saying? Helen hesitated. Well, that you're involved with him. The silence at the table was awkward. Involved how? Romantically. Victoria nearly choked on her wine. Helen, that's ridiculous. Is it? A beautiful widow, a single man living in your house. He doesn't live in my house. He spends all day there, takes care of your grandson, has lunch with you, because it's his job. Victoria, intervened Robert, another brother-in-law, even if there's nothing romantic, the situation is inappropriate. Inappropriate for whom? For our family, for our social standing. Our social standing? Victoria laughed bitterly. And what exactly is our social standing? That of a family that leaves a 4-year-old child home alone. That was a mistake. It was negligence. And if it weren't for Brandon, Ethan could have gotten hurt, or worse. But now you can hire a proper nanny. Proper by what criteria? The last name? The bank account? Victoria, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You're the ones being prejudiced. Richard, who had been quiet until then, decided to intervene. Everyone, I had the same reservations too, but after seeing how well Ethan is doing, how he's improved in every way, I have to admit that Brandon is doing an exceptional job. Richard, exclaimed Helen, you too. Helen, Ethan is my great-nephew. I care about his well-being above any social convention. But what about our reputation? Our reputation will survive. Ethan's happiness is more important. You've lost your minds, said Robert. Victoria, if you don't resolve this situation, we'll have to take more drastic measures. What kind of measures? Questioning your fitness to care for Ethan. The threat hung in the air like a sword. Are you threatening me? We're trying to protect the family's interests. Ethan is family, and his interests are being very well protected by Brandon. For now. But what about when he gets tired of this game, when he finds a way to take advantage of the situation? Brandon isn't like that. How can you be sure? Because I know his character. For how long? A few months? Victoria stood up from the table. Enough. This conversation is over. Victoria, wait. No, you've clearly shown that you care more about gossip than Ethan's well-being. I will do what's best for him, regardless of what you think. What if we have to go to court? Then go, but know that I will fight with all my strength to protect Ethan. Victoria left the lunch devastated. She arrived home and found Brandon and Ethan putting together a puzzle in the living room. "Grandma," shouted Ethan, "come see, we're almost done." "How beautiful, my love." Brandon noticed something was wrong. "Did something happen?" "We need to talk." They put Ethan to play in his room and sat in the living room. The family is pressuring me to fire you. That was to be expected. It's not just that. They're threatening to question my ability to care for Ethan. Brandon became serious. That's serious. Very serious. If they can prove I'm an unfit grandmother, they could take Ethan away from you. Exactly. They fell silent, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Brandon, maybe it's better if I let you go. What do you mean? If you leave, they won't have any more arguments against me. And Ethan, do you think that's fair to him? No, but I'd rather have him with me even without you than lose him completely. Brandon understood Victoria's dilemma. There's a third option. What? We can get married. The silence that followed was deafening. What? A marriage of convenience. That way I would become Ethan's stepfather legally. They couldn't question my presence in the house. Brandon, that's crazy. Why? We get along well. Ethan loves us, and we would solve the problem of the family pressure. But you don't love me, and I don't love you. Love can come with time. And even if it doesn't, at least Ethan would be safe and happy. Victoria looked at him as if she were seeing a stranger. You would be willing to marry without love for Ethan's sake? I would. Ethan has become more important to me than my own happiness. And me? Would I be able to marry again without love? Only you can answer that. Victoria stood up and went to the window. I never thought I'd marry again, especially not in an arranged marriage. It wouldn't be arranged. It would be a conscious choice by two people who care about a child's well-being. What if it doesn't work? What if we hate each other after a few years? Then we separate. But at least Ethan will have had a few years of stability. Victoria turned to him. You would really do this? I would. And you? I need to think. That night, Victoria could barely sleep. Brandon's proposal echoed in her mind. A marriage without love, but with mutual affection and the common goal of caring for Ethan. Was it madness, or was it the most sensible solution? The next day, she called Richard for a talk. Richard, I need your opinion on something. Of course. Brandon proposed to me. Richard almost spilled his coffee. What do you mean? A marriage of convenience, to resolve the issue of the family pressure. Victoria, this is crazy? I don't know, it's unexpected, but it would make sense, wouldn't it? If I married him, the family couldn't question anything anymore. Technically, no. And Ethan would have the stability he needs. That's also true. Then why hesitate? Richard sighed. Because marriage isn't a business contract, Victoria. It's a union based on love. It was in my first marriage, and I was very happy. But now it's not about me. It's about Ethan. And could you live without love for the rest of your life? It wouldn't be without love. It would be with a different kind of love. Love for Ethan, respect and affection for Brandon. And if you fall in love with someone else? I won't fall in love. My heart is closed to that. Are you sure? Absolutely. Richard studied her for a long moment. And Brandon? He might fall in love with someone. If that happens, we'll deal with the situation. Victoria, are you seriously considering this? I am. It's the only way to ensure Ethan stays with me and has the stability he needs. And what does Ethan think about this? He doesn't know yet. I want to decide first if it's feasible. Richard shook his head. This is very complex. Life is complex, Richard, especially when you have responsibilities to other people. What if I publicly support Brandon? If I tell the family he has my approval, would it be enough? Maybe. You've only been a widow for 2 years. The family might argue you're not in an emotional state to make important decisions. That's why the marriage would make sense. It would show I'm making a rational and thoughtful choice, or that you're doing something even crazier. Victoria smiled for the first time in the conversation. Richard, would you support me if I decided to marry him? I would. Not because I think it's the right decision, but because I think you deserve to make your own decisions. Thank you. But I want you to make a prenuptial agreement. to protect Ethan's interests. Of course. That night, Victoria called Brandon for a talk after Ethan fell asleep. "I accept your proposal." Brandon stopped washing the dishes and turned to her. "Are you sure?" "I am, but with a few conditions." "What are they?" "First, we make a prenuptial agreement protecting Ethan's assets. Second, if either of us falls in love with someone else, we talk openly about the situation. Third, Ethan always comes first." "I agree to everything. And one more thing. I want it to be a real marriage, not just on paper." "What do you mean?" "I want us to live as husband and wife, sharing the house, the responsibilities, the decisions about Ethan." "And physically?" Victoria blushed slightly. "Let's leave that for later. We'll see how we feel about each other." "Okay." "Brandon, are you sure you want this? Once we're married, there's no going back." "I'm sure. Ethan needs us together." "Then let's do it." They hugged, a hug of friendship and complicity, sealing an agreement that would change their lives forever. The news of the engagement caused an uproar in the family. Some were shocked, others outraged, and few supported the decision. "Victoria has completely lost her mind," Helen said to Robert. "A whirlwind marriage with a delivery driver. This will become a scandal. We need to do something." "What? She's an adult and can marry whoever she wants." "But she might be being manipulated." "By whom? By Brandon?" "Obviously. He saw an opportunity and took it." "Helen, do you know Brandon?" "I don't need to know. I know the type." "What type?" "Opportunist. Poor man who takes advantage of a rich and vulnerable woman." Robert sighed. He himself had thought that initially, but after observing Brandon with Ethan, he began to have doubts. "What if we're wrong about him?" "What do you mean?" "What if he really cares about Ethan and Victoria?" "Don't be naive, Robert. Men like him always have ulterior motives." "Helen, you know Victoria hasn't had a social life for years, that she doesn't see anyone." "So what?" "So what? Maybe she found in Brandon not just a caregiver for Ethan, but also a companion for herself." "A companion? He's a delivery driver. And she's a businesswoman. So what? What matters is how they treat each other." Helen shook her head. "You've switched sides." "I've changed my perspective. Since Brandon arrived, Victoria has been happier. Ethan is radiant. The house has a different energy." "Different energy?" "It's more family-like, more welcoming." "Robert, you're romanticizing the situation." "Maybe. Or maybe you're being prejudiced." "I'm not prejudiced." "No? Then why is the problem with Brandon the fact that he's a delivery driver?" Helen didn't know how to respond. "If he were a doctor or a lawyer or a businessman, would you have the same objections?" "Well, no, but it's different." "Why?" Because people from the same social class are better suited." "Says who?" "Says life experience." "Helen, my first marriage was to a woman from the same social class as me. It ended in divorce because we were incompatible in everything. My second marriage is to a woman from a simpler background and we're very happy." "It's different." "It's not. It's exactly the same thing. What matters is a person's character, not their bank account." Helen fell silent, processing her husband's words. "Robert, do you really think Brandon is a good person?" "I do. And more importantly, Ethan thinks so. And children don't lie about these things." Meanwhile, Victoria and Brandon were preparing for the civil wedding. They decided to have a simple ceremony, just with Ethan and a few close people. "Do you want to invite your family?" asked Victoria. "I don't have any family left. My parents died and I have no siblings." "Friends?" "Few. After the accident, I isolated myself a lot." "Brandon, are you sure you want to do this? Marrying me means giving up the possibility of finding true love." "Victoria, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Did you love your husband very much?" "Very much. He was the love of my life." "And do you think you could love someone like that again?" "No. That kind of love only happens once. Then we've both had our great loves. Now we can have a different love, built on partnership and mutual affection. A rational love rather than a passionate one." "Exactly. And focused on Ethan." You know what? That makes a lot of sense. And who knows, over time, we might develop deeper feelings for each other. Who knows? On the wedding day, only Ethan, Richard, and 2 of Brandon's friends were present. The ceremony was quick and simple, but moving. Ethan was radiant, wearing a little blue suit that Victoria had bought especially for the occasion. "Now Uncle Brandon is going to live with us forever?" asked Ethan. "Yes," replied Victoria. "Now he's your stepfather." "What's a stepfather?" "It's like a daddy who chose to take care of you." Ethan smiled and hugged Brandon tightly. "Now I have a complete family again." The child's words deeply touched both Victoria and Brandon. For the first time, both felt they had made the right decision. After the ceremony, they returned home and had a small celebration just for the 3 of them. Ethan was so happy he could hardly stop talking. "Grandma, now you won't be sad anymore." "Why would I be sad, my love?" "Because before you used to cry when you thought I wasn't looking." Victoria felt her heart tighten. She didn't know Ethan noticed her sadness. "I won't cry anymore, my love. Now we're all together." "And Daddy Brandon will never leave?" "Never," replied Brandon, hugging Ethan. That night, after putting Ethan to sleep, Victoria and Brandon talked about the new arrangements. "You can stay in the guest room if you prefer," said Victoria. "And you, would you prefer me to stay there?" "Honestly, I don't know. It's strange having someone sleeping in my house again." "I understand. I can stay in the guest room until you get used to the idea." "Thank you for understanding. Victoria, can we establish some rules for our living arrangement?" "What kind of rules?" "About household responsibilities, decisions regarding Ethan, finances." "Good idea. First, finances. I want us to have separate accounts. You contribute what you can and want to, but I don't want you to feel obligated to support the household." "But I want to contribute. It's part of being a husband, even if it's a marriage of convenience." "Then contribute what you feel comfortable with. And about Ethan? We make all important decisions together. Discipline, education, health, everything. And if we disagree about something, we talk until we reach a consensus. Ethan needs to see that we are a team." "I agree. And about our social life?" "What do you mean? Will we appear together at social events? Will we pretend to be a passionate couple?" "We won't pretend anything. We'll be what we are, a couple that respects and cares for each other. And if someone asks about our love story, we tell the truth, that we met through Ethan and discovered we had common goals." "That won't sound romantic." "It doesn't need to sound romantic. It needs to sound sincere." In the following weeks, they established a surprisingly harmonious domestic routine. Brandon took on most of the care for Ethan and the organization of the house, while Victoria focused on work, but always making time for the family. Ethan was at the peak of happiness. Having Brandon as an official stepfather changed his demeanor. He became more confident, more communicative, more affectionate. "You know what's most impressive?" commented Victoria one evening as they watched Ethan play. "What?" "How he's changed. It's not just that he's happier, he's more mature, more self-assured. Children need emotional stability to develop properly. And he has that now. We all do." Victoria looked at Brandon with curiosity. "Do you also feel more stable?" "Very much. After I lost my son, I thought I would never have a family again. Now I have you two." "And don't you miss romance, passion?" "I do, but I miss purpose more, and Ethan gives me that." "And me? Do I give you anything?" Brandon hesitated. "You give me partnership, complicity, someone to share the joys and worries of everyday life with." "That sounds pleasant." "Yes, more pleasant than I expected." They continued watching Ethan in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. 3 months after the wedding, they received an unexpected visit. Helen showed up unannounced, clearly upset. "Victoria, I need to talk to you." "Of course. Come in." Helen greeted Brandon politely, but with a certain coldness. "It's about Ethan." "What about Ethan?" "Robert and I went to his school yesterday for the parent-teacher conference." "And?" "The teachers couldn't stop praising him. They said he's unrecognizable, more participatory, happier, more sociable." "And what's the problem?" There's no problem, it's just they asked about the change. And when we explained that you had gotten married, yes, they became curious about Brandon, and when they found out that he was a delivery driver, were they prejudiced? No, the opposite. They were impressed. They said they rarely see such a positive transformation in a child. So what's the problem? Helen paused and looked at Brandon, who was playing with Ethan in the garden. There's no problem, Victoria. I came here to apologize. Apologize? For judging Brandon without knowing him, for questioning your decision, for being prejudiced. Victoria was surprised. Helen never admitted when she was wrong. What made you change your mind? Seeing Ethan talking with the teachers and watching you two together. What do you mean? You make a good team, you complement each other, and most importantly, Ethan is clearly happy. Helen, let me finish. I was wrong. I was more worried about what others would think than about Ethan's well-being. And that was selfish of me. Thank you for admitting that. Brandon seems like a man of integrity, and more importantly, he truly loves Ethan. He really does. And you, do you love him? Victoria hesitated. Not in the way I loved my first husband, but in a different way. A consistent way. Consistent, reliable, lasting, based on respect and affection. That can be stronger than passion. Can it? It can. Passion burns fast. Affection and respect grow stronger over time. The two women watched Brandon and Ethan playing in the garden. He's a good man, Helen said finally. Yes, and a good father to Ethan. Yes. Victoria, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you think you could still fall in love with him? I don't know. Maybe I already am, just in a different way, more mature. How so? It's not that overwhelming passion I felt for my first husband. It's something more solid, based on admiration, companionship, partnership. That's love, too. Is it? Yes. Maybe it's even a more mature love. That night, after Helen had left, Victoria kept thinking about the conversation. Was she falling in love with Brandon? Or was it just gratitude for everything he did for Ethan? She watched him giving Ethan a bath, laughing at the boy's antics, and felt a wave of tenderness. It wasn't passion, but it was something warm and comforting that grew in her chest when she saw him. Brandon, she called when he came out of the bathroom. Yes? Thank you. Why? For saving Ethan. And for saving me too. You saved me too. How? You gave me a reason to live again. They looked at each other for a long moment, and Victoria felt something different in the air, an intimacy that wasn't there before. Brandon, can I ask you a question? Sure. Have you been feeling something different between us? Brandon hesitated. What kind of thing? I don't know. More closeness? I have. I thought it was just the result of us living together. Maybe it's more than that. You think so? I think I'm starting to develop feelings for you. What kind of feelings? Romantic ones. The silence that followed was filled with tension. Me too, Brandon admitted finally. Really? Really? It's not like what I felt for my ex-wife. It's different, more profound, more based on truly knowing the person. That's exactly it. It's like we're building love instead of just feeling it. Does that scare you? A little, and you? Me too. But at the same time, it makes me hopeful. Hopeful why? Because it means our marriage could become real, truly real. Would you like that to happen? I would like that very much. Victoria smiled. Me too. They moved closer slowly and kissed. It was a soft kiss full of tenderness and promise. Wow, Victoria murmured when they parted. Wow, indeed. This changes everything, doesn't it? It does. For the better. Ethan will be happy. Why? Because he always asks when you two are going to kiss for real like in the movies. Brandon laughed. He notices everything, doesn't he? Children are very observant. Victoria, do you want to sleep with me tonight? I mean, in the same room. I do, but just to sleep. It's still too early for other things. Of course, just to sleep together. That night, for the first time in 2 years, Victoria did not sleep alone. And for the first time since the accident, Brandon did not have nightmares. In the following months, their relationship blossomed naturally. The love that was growing was different from anything they had experienced before, more mature, more conscious, more lasting. Ethan noticed the change and was overjoyed. Now he had a real family, with parents who loved and respected each other. "Daddy Brandon," Ethan said one day, "do you love Mommy Victoria?" "Yes, I do. Very much." "And does she love you?" "I think so." "She loves you," Ethan assured him. "I see it in her eyes when she looks at you." "And how do you know these things?" "Because kids see everything, and I'm really happy that you love each other." "Why?" "Because now our family is real, like in the movies." Brandon smiled and hugged Ethan. "Our family has always been real, champ, since day one. But now it's even more." "Yes, now it's even more." 1 year after the wedding, Victoria was pregnant. The news took everyone by surprise, including herself. "How do you feel about it?" asked Brandon. "Scared, happy, confused, all at the same time. And what about Ethan? How will he react?" "I don't know. We'll have to prepare him carefully." When they told Ethan, his reaction was unexpected. "Am I going to have a little brother?" "Or little sister," Victoria corrected. "That's so cool. Now I'm going to be the big brother." "And how do you feel about that?" "I think I'll teach him everything. How to write, how to play, how to be happy." "So you're happy?" "Very. Our family is going to be even bigger." The birth of Emma, 9 months later, brought a new dimension to their lives. Ethan was an exemplary big brother, always protecting and taking care of his little sister. "Daddy," Ethan said one day as they watched Emma sleep, "thank you." "Thank you for what, champ?" "For seeing my note, for saving me, for giving us a family." Brandon felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you for writing that note. Without it, I never would have found you." "And we would all be lost," added Victoria, joining them. "Now we'll never be lost again," said Ethan with the wisdom of a child, "because we have each other." 5 years after their first meeting, they were gathered for Emma's 6th birthday. The house was full of friends and family, including Helen, Robert, and Richard, who had become great supporters of the family. "Daddy," said Ethan, now 9 years old, "do you remember the day you found my note?" "Like it was yesterday." "Did you imagine it would lead to all this?" Brandon looked around, Victoria organizing the party with a radiant smile, Emma running among the guests with her crystal-clear laugh, the house full of love and joy. "No, I thought I was just helping a child in trouble." "But you were doing much more." "Was I?" "You were building our family." Victoria approached and hugged them both. "Ethan is right. That note changed our lives forever." "For the better," added Brandon. "Much better," agreed Ethan. "And it all started with a cry for help from a brave child," said Victoria, kissing Ethan's head. "And with a brave man who didn't ignore the cry," Ethan replied. "You're both brave," said Emma, joining the family hug. "And I love you." "We love you too, Princess," said Brandon, lifting the girl into his arms. "Daddy, tell the story of the note to the guests." "You want me to tell it?" "Yes, it's the best story in the world." Brandon laughed. "All right, but it's a long story." "The best stories always are," said Ethan wisely. And so, surrounded by his family and friends, Brandon told the story again of how a simple cry for help had transformed 3 lonely lives into a family united by love. When he finished, the emotional silence was broken by the guests' applause. "And the moral of the story," said Helen with tears in her eyes, "is that sometimes salvation comes from where we least expect it. And that love can blossom from the most unlikely situations," added Richard. "And that family isn't just about blood," Robert continued. "It's about choosing to care for one another," Victoria concluded. Ethan climbed onto a chair to make himself taller. "And that we should never ignore a cry for help, even if it's just a little note on the ground." Everyone laughed and applauded again. "A toast!" someone shouted. "To the Miller-Harrison family," said Richard, raising his glass. "To love born from kindness," added Helen. "And to second chances," finished Brandon, embracing his family. "And to magic notes," shouted Emma, making everyone laugh. As the party continued, Victoria and Brandon stepped away from the crowd and went into the garden. "Did you ever imagine our life would be like this?" asked Victoria. "Never. When I found that note, I just wanted to help a child. I never imagined I'd find a family. And I never imagined I could love again, especially in such a complete way. Complete. With you I have partnership, understanding, passion, friendship, everything. It's mature love. It's the best love." They watched the party through the window, Ethan entertaining the other children, Emma dancing in the middle of the room, guests laughing and talking. "You know what's most amazing?" said Brandon. "What?" "Ethan wrote that note asking for help, but we ended up being the ones who were rescued. It's true. He saved us just as much as we saved him. And now we have Emma too. Our family is complete. It really is." Suddenly, Ethan appeared at the garden door. "Dad, Mum, come on. We're going to cut Emma's cake." "We're coming, son," said Victoria. "And later can you tell more stories?" "What kind of stories?" asked Brandon. "Stories about our family, how we met, when Emma was born, all the adventures we've had together." "Of course, champ. We'll tell all the stories you want." "Cool." Ethan ran back inside. "He loves hearing our stories," Victoria commented, "because they're love stories and children love love stories, especially when they're real. And ours is very real." They returned to the party holding hands, ready to continue writing together the story of their extraordinary family. Later that night, after all the guests had left and the children were asleep, Victoria and Brandon sat in the living room, exhausted, but happy. "It was a beautiful party," said Victoria. "It was. Emma loved it. And Ethan was beaming while telling our story to his friends. He's proud of our family. How could he not be? Look what we've built." Brandon pulled Victoria closer to him on the couch. "Do you regret anything? Hiring you to take care of Ethan? Agreeing to marry me? Never. It was the best decision of my life. And you?" "Me too. Even though it started as a marriage of convenience, it became the most genuine marriage I can imagine, based on what really matters." "Exactly. Companionship, respect, affection, shared goals, and love, lots of love. Lots of love." They sat embraced in silence, listening to the soft sounds of the house. Emma breathing in her room, Ethan shifting in his bed, the clock marking time. "Brandon?" "Yes?" "Thank you for answering Ethan's cry for help. Thank you for letting me be part of your lives. I didn't let you. You earned your place here. And I plan to stay forever. Forever isn't long enough. Then let's stay beyond forever. Promise?" "Promise." And so, embraced in their living room, surrounded by their children's love and the certainty that they had built something special, Victoria and Brandon savored the peace of those who had found their place in the world. The note Ethan had written asking for help had become so much more than a cry for help. It had become the beginning of one of the most beautiful love and family stories anyone could imagine. A story that proves that sometimes miracles come in the form of simple acts of kindness, and that true love can blossom from the most unexpected circumstances. End of story. And now, dear listener, what did you think of this touching story? Can you imagine how difficult it must have been for Ethan to write that note asking for help? And what courage Brandon had to not ignore a child's plea? Leave in the comments what moved you most in this narrative, and whether you believe that love can truly blossom from such unexpected situations. Don't forget to leave your like to support our channel and subscribe so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.